prosperous, then surely the only point where Tata would require government of India or government of the other country will be in terms of negotiating, in terms of giving you a tariff architecture or in terms of certain regulatory architecture. Even with the existing regulatory and tariff architecture, there is a huge potential for these creation of these value chains. Why is Indian industry or other industry not interested in creating those value chains? Some years ago, we did a similar initiative with CLMV countries of ASEAN. There was a huge effort made at the time when I was the secretary in the government, and we made a huge effort at trying to see that the Indian industry invested in the textile sector in Vietnam or Myanmar. Similar efforts, why are they not happening? So I would like to ask Dr. Rehan about why, in his perception, if he has done a study to that effect, what is the reason why industry in South Asia always looks at governments? Either it has lost its initiative, or it doesn't consider South Asian market as a market worth developing. What is, in your view, a reason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not a very difficult question to answer, because I think we will all agree that the kind of trade and investment environment, the policy environment we are in South Asia, that kind of restrict the intra-regional investment. And when you talk about this regional value chain, I think very importantly, these are the two areas where trade and investment policies are not very favorable. And when you bring in the supply side issues, the structural issues, high cost of doing business and other things are very, very prominent in this part of the world. So that's why probably the big investors of India, they prefer going out of this region and then to invest in other parts of the world where things are relatively better situation.
Can you,
yes.
No, I just wanted you to allude into maybe a couple of instances of policies which don't allow the investments in these value chains.
Yes, sure. But Chairman, I was going to come to that point, but I thought that probably we should not be that pessimist as well, because I think there are some success stories in South Asia. And here I proudly say Bangladesh is the smartest country in South Asia, in fact. The reason is Bangladesh has very effectively used import from India to its in export sector. And the way Bangladesh became the second largest exporter of ready-made garments in the world, the import sourcing raw materials from India was very, very instrumental. I think that is the kind of story we need to actually tell more rather than looking at the failure cases, because this is what lessons we learn from that particular story would also help other South Asian countries where actually that did not really take place. The reason I'm saying, if we look at Bangladesh's import composition from India over the last 2 decades, that really changed dramatically. 2 decades ago, Bangladesh used to import some very basic materials, basic kind of stuff. But now it is mostly the raw materials, industrial raw materials and capital machineries. So I think this is something when we look at Nepal, Bhutan, it's not really taking place, and probably Pakistan has missed that train or the opportunity to exploit that kind of opportunity what is there. So when it comes to your point, like what are the policy level issues? I think things are kind of getting changed. 2 things need to be understood. First, I think that's what also been highlighted in some of the panelists yesterday, day before yesterday, that the business as usual case is not really going to help South Asian countries. They need to think out of the box. And second thing, of course, in the policy issues and other structural issues, these countries need to get their priorities right. So when it comes to these trade and investment policies, I think you see there are 2 issues. One, that India has actually moved on from high protection in using tariffs to kind of lower protection in tariffs, but India has the kind of problem now other South Asian countries face of relying more on the non-tariff issues. So, and that is kind of in many cases justified, because as the income has grown up in Indian, using the non-tariff issues, which are legitimate, is okay, but probably there are complaints of non-legitimate non-tariff issues. But where the other South Asian countries, since the kind of weaker or smaller countries, they don't have the capacity of imposing much of the non-tariff barriers. They rely heavily on the tariff issues. That's why probably you can see in Bangladesh, in Nepal, the tariffs are very high. So when it comes to policy issues, I think the tariff issue is really in Bangladesh and Nepal, if I take the example of Bangladesh and Nepal, I think these are really hurting. But things, as I said, the things are changing. Just want to highlight the recent initiative by the government of Bangladesh in terms of setting up special economic zones, 100 special economic zones. I'm not sure whether we get 100 by 2030, but even if we get another at least 10 or 20, that is really going to help, because there are 2 or 3 targeted special economic zones for Indian investors. As soon as they get realized, materialized, I think that's really going to change the scenario. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me bring Dr. Nazmul Hasan at this point. You know, we are talking of value chains, and we are talking of what kind of regulatory and policy-related facilitation can be done by countries. Now, why I ask him this question is because BIMSTEC is an organization where you bring in the elements of South Asia, ASEAN experience also, and therefore, to that extent, this ASEAN experience enriches the South Asian context. I would like to know from you if there has been any study or if there has been any effort at BIMSTEC to see how within the BIMSTEC region there has been a conscious effort at developing these value chains, and if so, then what has been the policy or regulatory prescription of those countries which has encouraged this kind of development?
Thank you, Chair. As you rightly pointed out, that BIMSTEC is positioned in such a way that it connects South Asia and Southeast Asia. So we have 7 member states out of 7, 5 from the South Asia, and 2 like Myanmar and Thailand are from Southeast Asia. They are the members of ASEAN. So regarding this regional value chain, in fact, we have a group, track 2 group called BNPTT, that is BIMSTEC National Networks of Policy Think Tanks, so of which RIS is a member. So they have held a couple of, I think 3 rounds of meeting. During second meeting held in Bangkok in 2015, they first brought out the idea of creating a regional value chain. They floated a few other ideas also. So creating regional value chain was one of them. And they suggested a study to be done by BIMSTEC to, analyze and, study the impact and what could be done within the BIMSTEC region to create the regional value chain. And from Bangladesh, CPD, Mustafa Sir is here. He proposed actually floated a concept note according to the decision of the meeting to conduct the study, and we are in the process of conducting the study. It has been finally decided by the recently concluded summit that the study will be done. There was a problem with the funding and all this thing during these 2-3 years. Eventually, the summit has given a clear direction that funding will be done from the BIMSTEC. How it will be done, they have, this will be discussed in the next meeting, and hopefully we can conduct the study, start the study very soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now in the last leg, let me address 2 very important areas which personally I feel that these are the biggest challenges before the South Asian region. And this is essentially the dimension of technology, and particularly so the digital economy. Now here it's not simply the issue of how technology is being used in manufacturing and services delivery, but also as to how these nations are contributing to each other's capacity in terms of enhancing their technology content of processes, procedures, facilitation, etc. And also in terms of what is happening in the area of digital economy. You know, there is the pace at which these developments are taking place globally is phenomenal, absolutely, it is disrupting. Uh, the I mean, I don't want to bring in what is happening in the WTO on e-commerce and the rest. But what is more important is, are these countries together recognizing the value of cooperating and collaborating in the area of technology and particularly digital economy? How are they integrating in research and developmental work in this area? And how are they envisioning their collaborative role vis-a-vis the rest of the world over the next 10, 15 years? Now, clearly there is not one institution which may be working on this issue, so I am opening this question to all the panelists, whoever wants to interact, but particularly I would like Dr. Vignaraja and Dr. Ratna to respond to this, specifically to these issues, and the others, if they have some views on this, then I would also like to do that. So I begin with you, please.
Thank you. So the digital economy really has these two sides. One is the huge opportunity. The other is the big challenge. On the opportunity front, we are beginning to get a little bit of the relocation of the Indian IT cluster in some of the other countries. So in Sri Lanka, for instance, we have some of the players, Infosys and others, that have come. They've set up subsidiaries, and that is created an industry, partly created an industry of about $1 billion from Sri Lanka exports, and some 50, 60,000 people working in there. But much of that bus of the digital economy has actually gone to the Philippines coming out of India. It hasn't come to South Asia. So that's the really interesting story, because the Philippines had an ample supply of graduates who were English speaking, cheaper than what you have in India. So that was the big thing, plus the broadband costs were much cheaper. So this was something really interesting. So it didn't go to South Asia, it went there, but we got bits of it. The aspect that I think in terms of the collaboration that would really be needed, and I think this is another important area where India can provide leadership in this, would be three things. One is helping the rest of South Asia to upgrade their graduates to the level that would be desirable by Indian industry in the IT sector. And again, as I mentioned, your TCDC program is your biggest asset vis-a-vis Chinese aid, which is hard infrastructure. And so I don't think that's been used as well as it should for all of South Asia, including Pakistan. I think that would be a great initiative if India were to do that, number one. Number two, I think we should have an agreement on cyber security. That is a tremendous issue after the hacking of the Bangladesh bank. We worry about this tremendously in Sri Lanka, and I sit on a governmental task force that is trying to look at these issues, and that would really help the environment. And piracy would be another, and the IP laws, I think, would be a third area. So I think these would be really important disruptors. And then perhaps on the softer side, we need to think of, what happens to the people in this digital economy, right? Because we're going to have the rewards to such a story go to the people with the skills. And there's a whole lot of sectors that are going to be marginalized as a result of the IT revolution, right? And that will create huge issues. So I think we need to think of universal basic income perhaps as a European concept. I'm not sure how easy that is. In countries like Sri Lanka, where we have a welfare state, we're thinking about issues of that and where we can do this. But maybe we need to be thinking of the softer side, and maybe think tanks can help in this way. Let me stop there.
Thank you. Ratna?
Thank you. I know it's the last bet, so maybe I'll go beyond the question which you have posed. But presently, this is one of the biggest challenge for the region. Challenge in the sense I was really listening, and I wanted to flag this issue when Ganesha was talking about his report as to how when China is, the labor cost is rising and other things is rising and their investment is coming to this part of the world, including India. But we must, and as you rightly touched upon, how long is that going to be? Is it sustainable? Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, mostly we are all having the labor-based industry and less of a capital-based industry. Tomorrow and today, there is a lot of debate happening towards artificial intelligence. When this comes and the technology doesn't transfer to Bangladesh, what will happen to Bangladesh as being the second largest exporter of the textile? Have we thought over it? When we talk about digital economy, and again, when Ganesha said most of it went to Philippines, I do not know whether it is a chicken and egg, but we need to really look into, is it related or linked to the denial of Mode 3 and Mode 4 in South Asia? Why is it that the IT industry and the professionals find it easy way to go to Philippines? I mean, I will not personally buy this argument that Philippines can speak English. I mean, Sri Lankans speak excellent English. Bangladeshis can speak English. We have the same history. We have the same lineage. I don't think that could be a constraint. I can understand if that is for Japan or for Korea, but not for this region. So therefore, I don't know, and so what I wanted to tell, if you look at South Asia, regional integration even has a very weaker wording in the entire Sustainable Development Goals. Trade as a means of implementation and not an end in itself. South Asia has always been focusing on trade, and not beyond that, which